an evangelical preacher led nearly 1,000 followers from the United States deep into the jungles of South America.
Well, how about you? Is the best thing ever happened to you?
They would build a new community, free of oppression and violence. It was to be their paradise on earth.
I wanted to leave as soon as I got there. I was in an armed encampment.
But outsiders threatened to expose the dark side of their leader.
We are going into Jonestown. And if any of your family members want to come home, then by God, we're going to bring them home.
You people gonna just...
Jim Jones, the leader of an American religious cult.
Jim Jones led over 900 of his followers into the mass suicide.
One of the biggest mass suicides in recorded history.
I always understood what happened. At some point, it did, on some level, become collective madness.
To whomever finds this note, collect all the tapes, all the writing, all the history. The story of this movement must be examined over and over. Jim Jones and this movement were born too soon. The world was not ready to let us live.
James Warren Jones was an American cult leader, political activist, preacher, and faith healer who led the People's Temple, a new religious organization which existed between 1955 and 1978. In what he claimed to be a revolutionary suicide, Jones and his inner circle orchestrated a mass murder-suicide in his remote jungle commune at Jonestown, Guyana, on November 18, 1978. As a youth, Jones developed an affinity for Pentecostalism and his desire to be a preacher. He was ordained as a Christian minister in the Independent Assemblies of God and attracted his first followers while participating in the Pentecostal Latter Rain movement and the healing revival during the 1950s. Jones's initial popularity arose from his joint campaign appearances and endorsement by the movement's prominent leaders, William Branham and Joseph Matson Bowes. With their support, Jones took a leadership role in multiple international conventions where he recruited many new members for his church. Jones founded the organization that would become the People's Temple in Indianapolis in 1955. Jones distinguished himself through civil rights activism, founding the temple as a fully integrated congregation and promoting Christian socialism. In 1964, Jones joined and was ordained a minister by the Disciples of Christ. His attraction to the disciples were largely due to the autonomy and tolerance they granted to differing views within their denomination. Claiming Indianapolis would be destroyed by nuclear weapons, Jones traveled to South America and California in an effort to locate a suitable location to move People's Temple in 1963 and 1964. In 1965, he moved the temple to California, where the group established its headquarters in San Francisco and became heavily involved in political and charitable activity throughout the 1970s. Jones developed connections with prominent California politicians and was appointed as chairman of the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission in 1975. Beginning in the late 1960s, Jones became increasingly vocal in his rejection of traditional Christianity and began promoting his teachings as apostolic socialism and making claims of his own divinity. Jones became progressively more controlling of the members of People's Temple, which at its peak had over 3,000 members. Jones' followers engaged in a communal lifestyle where they turned over all their income and property to Jones and People's Temple, who directed all aspects of community life. Following a string of bad publicity and reports of abuse at People's Temple, Jones began constructing Jonestown in Guyana during 1974 and gradually began convincing and compelling many of his followers to live there with him. Jones claimed that he was constructing a socialist paradise free from the oppression of the United States government. By 1978, media reports had surfaced of human rights abuses and accusations that people were being held in Jonestown against their will. Deciding to investigate these reports, U.S. Representative Leo Ryan led a delegation to the commune in November of that year. While boarding a return flight with some former temple members who had wished to leave, Ryan and 4 others were murdered by gunmen from Jonestown. Jones then ordered and coerced a mass murder-suicide that claimed the lives of 1,918 commune members, 304 of them children. Almost all of the members died by drinking Flavor Aid laced with cyanide.